What's up, everybody? It's your favorite builder's favorite nerd, and today we're going to do some kind of behind-the-scenes stuff on this Planet of Junk diorama that I did. Now, I had to go through this a bit, but this isn't a tutorial. All of the tutorials will be on Patreon. They're on Patreon exclusively at the $5 level. So I used to do one a month, but I've gotten to the point where I'm usually putting up 2, sometimes 3. I don't think I've done 4 a month, but just, kind of depending on other content I have, I put them up as I can. So that's where you can find all the tutorials. This is more about kind of behind the scenes and looking at it in hindsight and giving you guys a glimpse at what's going on in some of the process. So I will say, because this doesn't have much to do with the how-to, that one of the things I am really taking into account now is making sure that all of the bots that I want to display have the space. So even if I don't have the bot, once the diorama is done, it's done. So I got to make sure that the space is there available for them. So that's kind of what I'm mapping out here. I knew I had this shelf pretty much done, so I just wanted to make sure that I had everything exactly where I wanted it. Now, you guys know one of my rules is to never do stuff that's super tune accurate, right? And I kind of broke that a little bit with the Galvatron one, and I'm kind of breaking it a little bit here, right? Because this is like a very cartoon, sci-fi theme, right? This Planet of Junk. But what I was able to do is add elements of it that seem, I think, more realistic, which was all these bits and pieces here that you can see. Excuse me. And it's also interesting because just behind the scenes wise, there's 2 figures that broke on me that are pretty paramount to my overall reviewing career. And they are the TFC Hound and the Jetfire. I forget even what the name of it was. And the TFC Hound was originally bought by Robert D, sent to Brave, and then sent to me. And then the Jetfire was Dust's from Into the Realm, and he lent it to me, and then that broke, and they were both kind of atrocious figures anyway. But long story long, I've kept the pieces, and I initially was going to do like a shadow box thing of them and have them in a shadow box hung up just because of how meaningful they kind of have been to the channel and then subsequently, therefore, to me. But I was able to kind of use the pieces on the diorama for like pieces of junk. And it's like, it's such a better idea than the shadow box. And now it's like those pieces are forever displayed in my collection, which is really, really rewarding in a number of ways that I didn't even quite take into account. I'll also say that this shelf was a little shorter than most of my shelves because the shelf above it is the one with Ultra Magnus on it that I had to make a little taller in order to accommodate him. So in order to do that, I, you give and take, right? So the take was on the shelf below it. So this is the shelf below it, and as a result, it's kind of short. But most of the bots I was having on here were going to be short, and I didn't plan on getting the Junkions, but I couldn't let a couple of them go. But, I knew I was going to be a fair amount of mini bots, so I was like, it should be fine. And I think it ultimately is. It's a little cramped, but I don't think it's the biggest deal. As you can see in the background, there's like Halloween decorations and stuff. So that gives you an idea of when I did this. And when it went up on Patreon was probably subsequently somewhere in that space. So, yeah. Now, the background itself is definitely where most of the cartoon aesthetic kind of comes in. And that's really just so it doesn't... My thought process is just so that when it finally came to fruition, that it wouldn't look just like piles of bits all over, that something about it would register for the fans of the franchise as to what you were looking at. And that was done basically with the background. I went pretty tune accurate for the background in an effort to kind of, I don't know, make people be like, and then there's the junk, like kind of, tie it all together, I guess is the best way to say it. So, and I haven't done a whole lot of cartoon style backgrounds. So, that was a new challenge for me too. And I do look forward to to new challenges, because you end up doing a lot of stuff. Like, and anybody that does dioramas for figures knows, like, you blow through those brown paints and those gray paints like nobody's business, but you rarely get to kind of experiment with a lot of other colors. So, even just doing stuff like where the background here was like yellows and oranges and reds, and kind of learning how they blend and learning how they map out was of importance. And like I said, like, I'm the key to this now with me, because I want to continue doing the diorama so that the spaces are done, and the more spaces that I have done, the less missing figures stands out, as long as it has something on the shelf. So I recently did one for the Headmasters, for instance, that we will do at some point. But on the Headmaster one, I 100% am missing a figure on it. But after I put the diorama in, you don't really notice. And that's something that it's something you don't notice, but it doesn't matter as much. And it's something that I noticed rather after doing my Marvel Legends ones. And once I got all the spaces finished, I was like, wow, like I know the characters that I'm missing, but looking at it as a whole, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, which is something I've been preaching recently. And you don't really think about what you're missing. You kind of really get to appreciate what you have, which is nice. It's just not as glaring. Now, so in doing that with this and wanting to move forward with dioramas, even though shelves aren't complete, it was important for me to make sure that, look, if the figure does come out, that I have accounted for it. Because I can tell you there's been plenty of times where I've thought to myself, man, there's no way they're going to make X. And then X comes, So I wanted to have that available, but also make it not look like there's a glaring hole on the shelf, so that there's a little bit of playability. Now, it just so happens that I lucked out with this shelf that I was pretty sure I was pretty much done with the characters that were going on it, so I didn't have too much to worry about. And looking at this now, like, I remember doing this and hoping that it would work, and it does. And it's very like the brown bits, the junk, the piles of junk, as it were. They're kind of just suggestive enough where it reminds you. And I think that red fading into that black is very iconic, of that movie and that scene. And if you know that scene and you know that movie, then the moment that you see those colors and those shapes, it's just kind of instantly recognizable. Because I'll tell you, one of the problems and challenges that I'm running into with Transformer displays is that I want them to be unique, but I also want them to be functional, and it gets challenging. Like, I want them to tie to an episode or tie to something, but like a lot of times if you watch that show, they're just in the desert. You know what I mean? Like, they're just in the desert, or like on some canyons, or they're like in some super cartoony space. And I know people love like the Arcs and Nemesis and all that kind of stuff, but I do not. It's just not my bag. But I've seen some good ones out there, don't get me wrong, but it's just not my bag. This was a big learning process for me, just like the airbrushing of these pieces and trying to, give it some texture and life. It must have been warm because I'm taking my shirt off. Oh, sleeveless Bob in the house. What's good, ladies? But another thing that I wanted to say is that at the end of this video, I am going to cut to a point where it is just my initial reaction after I got it complete, so that you guys can get my real kind of in-time reaction as to how I felt about it. Because, the only dioramas I've really been super disappointed with have been Transformer ones. So whenever they work, I'm pretty happy with them. Now, in contrast, I have had one Star Wars one turn out poorly, and there's a couple Marvel Legends ones that I'm not 100% happy with. But overall, I've been happy with most of them far more than I have been with the Transformer ones, where I actually have ripped Transformer ones out to date that I've been like, nope, it just doesn't work. So when I get it right, it feels good. And I'm getting a little bit more confident because I've gotten a lot more right recently than wrong. I think I just finally realized exactly what it is that makes it work. But at least for my sensibilities. But yeah, like, look at just like adding those layers and layers of color, and then how much like more interesting it starts to look. That's I don't know, something to be said for that. It's for me on like I've been modeling and stuff since before I can remember. Like, I was painting Warhammer stuff when I was 12, 13. So, when I think about that personally, I reflect back on it. It's like, man, there's a lot of growth there. I was a little concerned about how busy it was all going to look with all that stuff. And then, you know, figures on top, and then there's, you know, it's kind of a busy background with those sharp, jagged edges popping out of the ground and sort of, you know, cutting through the sky. So I think at this point I started to try to tie it together, which is what I used a lot of the reds for, to sort of make it feel like one giant shape instead of a ton of little pieces, because even though it's a planet of junk, you know, you don't necessarily want it to look like junk, do you? So here we go. And there it is. And I think it's okay. I think it's going to be okay. I got to wait and see how it looks with figures in it. But I think it's okay. My one wall is short. I guess I got a measurement wrong. It's super aggravating, but yeah, I'm pretty happy. Right now, we'll have to see how it feels with figures in it. But like, it feels dirty. It feels filthy. You know, got our faces in there and stuff. Yeah, I don't hate this so far. And there it is. And I'm good with it. I'm good with that. It doesn't feel like a cartoon. It feels unique. I'm good with that. I'm happy. I didn't know if I was going to be, and looking at certain parts, like looking at like the piles of rubble, I was like, man, I don't know if this works. You know, because your instinct is to kind of put more details in it. But the truth is that it's better when it just blends in, when it just becomes piles of stuff and you don't really look at the specific shapes. You know, I'm very happy. I'm very happy with how that turned out. It's a good addition to the shelves. But my measurements are definitely way off. I'm not exactly sure how that happened, but it happened. But, oh well, I'll fix it next time. But yeah, oh, it feels good to be happy with something. So there they are. There's my Technobot shelf. Coming along nicely, I'd say. Oh, you know what? Let's put this in there. There you go. Now that's in there.